Today on Bench Briefs, we're looking at a recent Supreme Court of Canada decision that dives deep into the heart of constitutional rights and freedoms. The case is Alford versus Canada, Attorney General, a 2026 ruling that challenges how certain laws interact with the protections guaranteed by our Constitution. At its core, this case is about an individual named Alford who took issue with specific provisions in Canadian law. While the details of Alford's background and the exact events that led to this legal challenge aren't fully laid out in the summary, the big picture is clear. Alford argued that these laws, as applied by the Attorney General of Canada, infringed on rights protected by the Canadian Constitution. So why does this matter? Well, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the cornerstone of our constitutional democracy. It guarantees fundamental rights and freedoms to everyone in Canada. Things like freedom of expression, equality rights, and protection against unreasonable search and seizure. When a law is challenged as unconstitutional, the courts have to carefully weigh whether it unfairly limits these rights, and if so, whether such limits can be justified in a free and democratic society. The Supreme Court was asked to decide two main questions. First, do the provisions of law that Alford challenged actually violate constitutional rights and freedoms? And second, if they do, can those violations be justified under the Charter's legal framework? This framework allows certain rights to be limited, but only if the government can demonstrate that the limits serve a pressing and substantial objective, and that the means chosen are reasonable and proportionate. In other words, it's not enough to show that a law restricts a right. The government must prove that the restriction is necessary and balanced, striking the right fit between achieving its goal and respecting individual freedoms. The court's role here was also to interpret the Constitution in a way that reflects modern values and principles. This means the judges had to consider how to apply constitutional protections in the context of the issues raised by Alford's challenge, even as society and legal understandings evolve. While the full decision lays out the court's detailed reasoning, what makes this case significant is how it reinforces the ongoing dialogue about the limits of government power and the protection of individual rights. Cases like Alford versus Canada remind us that constitutional rights are not static. They require constant vigilance and interpretation to ensure they remain meaningful and effective in changing times. This case also highlights the important role of the Supreme Court as the ultimate interpreter of the Constitution. It shows how the court balances competing interests, safeguarding rights while recognizing that some limitations may be justified in certain circumstances. For everyday Canadians, the implications are clear. When laws are challenged and reviewed by the highest court, it affects how rights are understood and protected across the country. The outcome of Alford versus Canada will influence future cases and legal debates about the scope and limits of constitutional freedoms. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Bench Briefs. Be sure to tune in next time as we explore more cases that shape the Canadian legal landscape. Until then, take care and stay curious.